My brother-in-law's fiancée laughed at my hearing aids during her engagement dinner. She raised her champagne glass in a private room at Perry's Steakhouse in Plano and said, "I hope everyone speaks clearly tonight. We know Rachel's little soldier ears don't work like they used to." The table laughed because they thought it was safe to laugh. I was the quiet veteran at the end of the table. The woman with bad knees, a stiff back, and 18 years of Army logistics behind me. I had learned how to move fuel, food, medicine, and ammunition through places where one missed shipment could cost lives. But to Celeste Vale, I was just an aging woman in sensible shoes. Then she mocked the elderly clients who had financed her new beauty clinic. She said most old people got scared the moment a lawyer was mentioned. That was when my husband connected his laptop to the restaurant television. And while Celeste was still smiling, every screen in the room lit up with the contracts, refinancing papers, and text messages she thought no one would ever see. My name is Rachel Mercer. I served 18 years in the United States Army, most of them in logistics, which sounds boring to people who have never gone hungry, run out of clean water, or waited for replacement batteries in a place where night vision decides who gets home. I served in Kuwait. I served outside Mosul. I spent years learning that behind every dramatic mission, there are quiet people counting pallets, fuel loads, convoy windows, medical crates, and repair parts. No one writes songs about logistics. That was fine with me. I never needed applause. What I did need, after retiring, was peace. My knees hurt when the weather changed. My left ear had permanent damage from an explosion that happened too close to a supply route checkpoint. Crowded restaurants made it hard to separate voices. Some days, I still looked for exits before I looked at menus. My husband, Daniel Mercer, understood most of that. Daniel was not military. He was a forensic accountant who built his life around numbers, bank records, and the quiet satisfaction of proving that liars usually leave trails. He was patient, careful, and almost impossible to surprise, which is why I noticed when he began watching his younger brother Ethan with the same expression he used on tax files that did not add up. Ethan Mercer had always wanted to look successful before he became successful. He wore expensive watches before he could afford them. He leased cars he called business assets. He spoke about investments with the confidence of a man who had memorized words from people richer than him. His fiancée, Vanessa Blake, made him look convincing. Vanessa was beautiful in a polished, expensive way. Smooth blonde hair, perfect skin, white dresses, diamond jewelry. A voice that could make cruelty sound like a marketing strategy. Together, they ran a cosmetic clinic in Plano called Verity Aesthetics. The website promised confidence, renewal, and affordable beauty for every stage of life. The lobby had white orchids, gold chairs, and soft music. Behind the polished front desk was a financing model built like a trap. At first, I knew only pieces. Ethan said business was booming. Vanessa said older clients loved payment plans. Patricia, Daniel, and Ethan's mother bragged that her son and future daughter-in-law were creating something special. Then Daniel began noticing contradictions. Patricia had refinanced her home in Arlington. Uncle Gary had given Ethan money for what he thought was a real estate expansion. Aunt Louise had wired funds for what she believed was equipment financing. And Ethan kept saying the clinic was close to becoming huge, even while vendors were calling about unpaid invoices. Daniel did not accuse anyone at first. He just watched. Accountants are dangerous that way. The engagement dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Perry's Steakhouse had a private room with dark wood walls, low lighting, white tablecloths, and a television screen at one end for the slideshow Vanessa had insisted on showing. Patricia arrived wearing pearls and nervous pride. She had spent money on the dinner she should not have spent because Ethan told her appearances mattered. She believed him. Mothers often believe the child who needs the most excuses. Ethan stood near the bar, laughing too loudly. Vanessa floated from guest to guest, accepting compliments as if they were payments. Daniel and I arrived 10 minutes early. He carried his laptop bag. I noticed... Work? I asked. Possibly, he said. That was all. After 18 years around military people and 12 years married to Daniel, I knew when not to ask a second question in public. We sat near the middle of the long table. Across from us sat Marilyn Donnelly, a quiet woman in her 70s with silver hair and a navy blue dress. She was the widow of a Vietnam veteran named Paul Donnelly. Patricia had invited her because she attended the same church group. I had met Marilyn once before. She had mentioned getting a small treatment at Vanessa's clinic because she wanted to feel less tired when she looked in the mirror. Now she looked tired in a different way. Not vain. Worried. I recognized that look. It is the expression people wear when a bill has become bigger than the person who signed it. The insult started before dinner. Vanessa looked at me and said, "Rachel, you look practical." I smiled. "Thank you." She blinked, as if I had not played my assigned role. Ethan laughed. "Rachel doesn't do glam. She did army stuff forever. Supply trucks and boots and all that." "Logistics," I said. "Right," Vanessa said. "Very important, I'm sure." Daniel's hand stilled beside his water glass. Vanessa leaned closer. "I honestly admire women who can let themselves age naturally. It takes courage." I looked at her perfect face. "It takes less maintenance." A few people coughed into napkins. Daniel hid a smile. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. She did not like being answered. Later, when the server asked whether anyone had hearing concerns before the speeches, Vanessa raised her glass. "Oh, speak loudly for Rachel," she said. "Those little soldier ears have been through so much." The table laughed. "Not everyone." "But enough." Patricia looked embarrassed, but not enough to stop it. Ethan grinned. Daniel's face changed completely. He did not laugh. He did not smile. He looked at Vanessa as if she had just confirmed something he already knew. I touched his wrist under the table. Not yet. His jaw tightened, but he waited. The slideshow began after the steaks were served. Photos of Ethan and Vanessa appeared on the television. Beach vacations. Clinic opening. Ribbon cutting. Engagement ring close-up. A caption appeared under one picture. Building beauty, confidence, and community. Vanessa dabbed her eyes. Ethan kissed her temple. Patricia whispered, "Beautiful." Then Vanessa stood for a toast. She thanked everyone for coming. She thanked Ethan for believing in her vision. She talked about empowering women to invest in themselves. Then she made a mistake. She talked too long. People who profit from false kindness often reveal themselves when applause does not arrive quickly enough. Vanessa said, "Our clients trust us because we help them say yes to themselves, especially women of a certain age. So many of them have spent their lives being afraid of money, afraid of change, afraid of becoming invisible." Marilyn stared down at her plate. Vanessa continued, "We make the process simple. Low monthly payments, easy approvals, confidence now, details later." Daniel's eyes lifted. "Confidence now, details later." That sounded like a confession wearing perfume. Uncle Gary chuckled. "Sounds like a good business model." Vanessa smiled. "It is. Most seniors panic when lawyers are mentioned, but they do sign when they understand consequences." The room went still. Not silent, Still, there is a difference. Silence can be polite. Stillness is the moment before a body decides whether to run. I looked at Marilyn. Her hands were trembling. Daniel stood. Ethan frowned. Danny? Daniel walked to the television. Vanessa laughed lightly. Oh, do you have a surprise slideshow too? Yes, Daniel said. I had heard my husband angry before. This was not anger. This was colder. He connected his laptop to the HDMI cable beside the screen. Ethan took one step forward, then stopped when Daniel looked at him. The screen changed. The first image was not a family photo. It was a loan agreement. Verity Aesthetics Patient Financing Addendum. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Daniel said, "This is the financing agreement signed by Marilyn Donnelly 7 months ago." Marilyn covered her mouth. Patricia whispered, "Daniel, what are you doing?" He did not look away from the screen. Reading. He clicked. The next slide highlighted the deferred interest clause. Introductory payment, $99 monthly. Deferred interest after promotional period, 29.9%. Retroactive application from date of service. Balloon balance due upon missed payment. Daniel said. Marilyn was told her monthly payments would stay under $100. After the promotional period ended, the balance jumped to over $8,000. Vanessa snapped. That is confidential client information. Daniel turned. No, it is evidence provided voluntarily by the client. Every head turned to Marilyn. She nodded once, tears in her eyes. I gave it to him. Ethan's face went white. The next slide was worse. A text message. Vanessa to Ethan. Most elderly clients panic when attorneys get mentioned. Use the legal notice language and they will pay before asking questions. No one laughed now. Vanessa lunged toward the laptop. I stood. She stopped. I am not tall. I am not young. My knees hurt when I rise too fast. But 18 years in uniform teaches a person how to take up space when it matters. Sit down, I said. Vanessa stared at me. You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. I have a very clear idea. Ethan turned to Daniel. Where did you get that? Daniel clicked again. A spreadsheet appeared. Payments. Transfers. Vendor accounts. Personal expenses. A column labeled investor funds. Daniel said, From the laptop you asked me to repair last month. Ethan's mouth opened. Daniel raised a hand. Before you speak, remember that I did not access anything hidden. Your financial folders were on the desktop under Clinic Growth. You also left signed refinancing scans, investor summaries, and client collection templates in the same folder. Patricia's face had gone gray. Refinancing scans? She said. Daniel looked at his mother. His voice softened. Mom, I am sorry. He clicked. The screen showed Patricia's home refinance documents. Arlington property. Cash out refinance. Funds transferred to Ethan Mercer? Patricia whispered. That was for the real estate expansion. Ethan said. It was all part of the same growth plan. Daniel shook his head. No, there was no real estate purchase. He clicked again. The funds had gone into Verity Aesthetics operations, luxury travel, lease payments on Ethan's car, and a marketing package Vanessa had labeled Elder Conversion Funnel. Aunt Louise began crying. Uncle Gary stood halfway, then sat back down like his legs had failed. Patricia looked at Ethan. I gave you my house. Ethan said, Mom, don't make it sound like that. Her voice broke. I gave you my house. Vanessa's mask cracked before Ethan's did. That was predictable. Ethan had guilt. Vanessa had strategy. She looked around the table and seemed to understand the room had turned against her. So she chose contempt. "You people are unbelievable," she said. Daniel closed the laptop halfway, but the screen stayed mirrored behind him. Vanessa pointed toward Marilyn. "She signed the agreement. She wanted the treatment. She wanted to look younger, and now she wants to pretend she was helpless because the payments became inconvenient." Marilyn flinched. I moved before I thought, not toward Vanessa. Toward Marilyn. I stood beside her chair. "You do not speak to her that way." Vanessa laughed. And there it is, the little soldier woman defending every fragile old person in the room. Daniel's eyes darkened. I said, "I don't think I'm special because I was a soldier, but I know what honor sounds like. And this is not it." The room went quiet. I continued. "Honor is not making an elderly widow sign something she does not understand. It is not threatening her with attorneys when she asks why the payment changed. It is not convincing your future mother-in-law to risk her house while you lease a luxury car." Vanessa's face twisted. "You have no idea how business works?" "No," I said, "but I know how predation works." Ethan whispered, "Rachel, stop." I looked at him. "You should have stopped long before tonight." The police arrived 17 minutes later. Daniel had not called them from the restaurant. He had called earlier. So had Marilyn's nephew, who was waiting outside with a folder of documents and 2 other former clients who had agreed to make statements. Plano police did not storm the room. They entered carefully. A manager came with them, pale and nervous. An officer named Sergeant Colby asked who had the documents. Daniel raised his hand. Vanessa immediately began talking. "This is a private family event. My fiancé's brother is having some kind of emotional episode. These are stolen business records." Sergeant Colby looked at Daniel. "Sir?" Daniel handed him a printed packet. "These are copies provided by clients, family members, and records given to me by the device owner when he requested repair. I am prepared to give a full statement." Ethan sank into his chair. Vanessa turned to him. "Tell them—" He did not. That was when she realized he was not strong enough to save her. "Tell them!" she hissed. Ethan looked at his mother instead. Patricia was crying silently, one hand pressed to her chest. "He broke." "I didn't know it was that bad," he whispered. Vanessa stared at him. Daniel said, "You knew enough." Ethan covered his face. I ignored it. Patricia's sob was small and devastating. Why? No one needed Ethan's answer. We could see it in his watch, his car, his suit, the ring on Vanessa's finger, the way he had mistaken image for success until the bill came due in other people's names. Statements were taken in a side room. The engagement dinner dissolved into clusters of shock. Uncle Gary called his bank. Aunt Louise called her daughter. Marilyn sat with me near the wall while an officer took her statement. She kept apologizing. "I should have read it better." I said, "They built it so you wouldn't—" "I feel foolish." "You trusted someone who presented herself as trustworthy? That is not foolish." Her eyes filled again. "My Paul handled money. After he died, I tried to be brave about everything." I understood that more than she knew. War changes people. So does grief. Both can make you tired enough to trust the wrong voice if it promises an easier road. I said, "You are being brave now." She held my hand. Her skin was thin and cold. Across the room, Vanessa sat with her arms crossed while Ethan spoke to Sergeant Colby. She looked less like a bride and more like a defendant, waiting for the room to remember she was beautiful. It did not. Beauty stops working when the receipts arrive. The engagement ended that night. Not officially, not with an announcement, but everyone knew. Ethan tried to follow Vanessa outside after the police finished the first interviews. She turned on him in the hallway. "You ruined everything." He said, "I ruined it? You let your brother humiliate me. You used my mother?" Vanessa laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You used her too." That landed. Because it was true. Ethan had not designed every contract. He had not written every threat. But he had accepted the money, ignored the warnings, and enjoyed the illusion. His guilt was not as polished as Vanessa's, but it was still guilt. Daniel stood beside me, watching his brother absorb the first honest sentence Vanessa had said all night. I asked him quietly, "Are you okay?" "No." "Are you sorry you did it?" He looked at Patricia, who was sitting alone with a cup of water, staring at nothing. "No." The legal aftermath took months. Verity Aesthetics closed within 8 weeks. The website went dark first. Then the phone line. Then the sign came down from the glass door. Civil lawsuits followed. Marilyn's case became one of several. Former clients came forward with nearly identical stories: low monthly payments, confusing finance terms, sudden balance increases, legal threats when they questioned the numbers. Some were widows. Some were retired teachers. Some were veteran spouses. Some were simply old enough to have trusted a smiling woman in a white coat. Ethan was not criminally charged at first, but investigators and civil attorneys pulled him apart financially. His accounts were examined. His business filings were subpoenaed. His claim that he did not know became harder to maintain each time an email showed he had been copied. Vanessa fought longer. People like Vanessa always do. She called it a misunderstanding. Then a compliance issue. Then a smear campaign. Then financial illiteracy among clients. But the text messages hurt her. Especially one. Most elderly clients panic when attorneys get mentioned. You cannot put softness around a sentence like that. It is a window into the room where intent lives. Patricia lost the Arlington house. Not immediately. Daniel tried to help her keep it. So did Uncle Gary and Aunt Louise, even though they had their own losses to manage. But the refinance had shifted too much weight onto a woman whose retirement income could not carry it. In the end, she moved into a smaller townhouse near Daniel and me. She cried the day she handed over the old keys. I stood with her in the empty living room. The carpet had fading marks where furniture had been for 20 years. Family photos were packed in boxes. A house can become a witness to everything people refuse to say. Patricia looked at me. I thought helping my son meant being a good mother. I said, "Sometimes helping becomes harm when the truth is hidden." She nodded. I should have asked more questions. Yes. It was not cruel to say that. It was honest. She looked through the empty room. I wanted him to be successful. I know. I think I wanted it so badly I stopped asking what success was costing. That was the first sentence that sounded like healing. Ethan began paying people back. Slowly. Painfully. Not because the law made one clean path, but because Daniel and Patricia demanded one. He sold the car, sold the watch, moved into a one-bedroom apartment, took contract work under supervision, and began financial counseling that required him to say out loud what he had done without dressing it as bad luck. He apologized to me 3 times before I believed he understood the apology. The first time, he said, "I'm sorry you got dragged into this." I told him, "Try again." The second time, he said, "I'm sorry things got out of hand." I said, "Things do not get out of hand by themselves." The third time, months later, he sat at our kitchen table and said, "I am sorry I let Vanessa mock you because I thought her confidence made me look successful. I am sorry I took Mom's money and let her believe it was safer than it was. I am sorry I saw warning signs and chose comfort." That time, I nodded. Not forgiveness. Acknowledgement. There is a difference. Vanessa did not apologize. She settled 2 civil claims without admitting wrongdoing. Then she moved to Scottsdale and rebranded herself online as a wellness consultant. People like her rarely vanish. They change fonts, colors, and taglines, but her license complaints followed her. So did the lawsuits. So did the searchable record of what happened at Perry's Steakhouse in Plano, Texas, when a room full of people watched a beautiful lie become very ugly under fluorescent evidence. Marilyn got part of her money back. Not enough. It is never enough. But enough to stop the bleeding. She sent me a card after the settlement. On the front was a watercolor painting of bluebonnets. Inside, she wrote, "You did not make me feel weak. You made me feel believed." I kept that card in my desk. Not with my military records. With the things that remind me the second half of life still gives a person work worth doing. People sometimes ask whether I regret letting the exposure happen at the engagement dinner. They ask because public humiliation makes people uncomfortable, especially when the person being humiliated is finally the one who caused harm. I understand the question. I have asked myself a harder version of it. Could we have done it privately? Could we have avoided the shock? Could Patricia have learned the truth without losing it in front of relatives? Maybe. But private conversations had protected Ethan too long. Private confusion had protected Vanessa too well. Private shame had kept Marilyn alone with a contract she thought was her fault. Silence can look like kindness from a distance. Up close, sometimes it is just shelter for selfish people. That is what age has taught me. Not to fight every insult. Not to answer every shallow person. Not to become cruel just because the world offers opportunities. You do not need to become cruel to stand your ground. But you do need to know when quiet is no longer mercy. Daniel and I still go to Perry's sometimes. Not often. The first time we returned, the hostess did not recognize us. I was grateful. We sat in the main dining room, not the private room. My knees hurt that night, and the noise made my left ear ring, but Daniel sat where I could see his face clearly. He has learned small things like that matter. Halfway through dinner, he said, "I should have told you sooner what I found." Yes. I thought I was protecting you from stress until I had enough proof. I know. I was also afraid that if I was right, my family would never be the same. I looked at him. Was it? No. Was that because of the truth? He shook his head. No, the truth just turned on the lights. That was the best way anyone had said it. The truth did not destroy the family. It revealed what had already been cracking in the dark. Patricia is safer now. Not happier every day, but safer. She has a smaller kitchen, fewer rooms, and a garden she can actually manage. On Sundays, she comes over after church. Sometimes she talks about Ethan. Sometimes she does not. Marilyn joined our veteran spouses support group as a volunteer. She says she is done being embarrassed by paperwork. Uncle Gary still grumbles about lawyers. but he reads every document now. Aunt Louise took a financial literacy class and brings up compound interest at inappropriate moments, which I secretly enjoy. Ethan is rebuilding slowly. He is not a hero. He is a man who did wrong and now has to live without pretending he did not. That is not redemption yet. It is the beginning of responsibility. And me? I am still the woman Vanessa called a little soldier. The woman with damaged hearing. The woman with knees that ache before rain. The woman who once moved supplies through war zones and later stood in a steakhouse beside an elderly widow while a room full of people learned what exploitation looks like when printed in 12-point font. I am not special because I served. Service does not make every veteran wise or good. But service did teach me something Vanessa never learned. People are not opportunities. The old are not targets. Trust is not a resource to strip mine. And dignity does not disappear just because someone with smoother skin decides you are no longer useful to look at. At the engagement dinner, Vanessa thought my silence meant weakness. She thought my hearing aids made me easy to mock. She thought age was a flaw. Military service was a costume, and kindness was something predators could use until it ran out. She was wrong. Kindness is not always staying silent. Sometimes kindness is sitting beside the widow. Sometimes it is showing the contract. Sometimes it is letting the police take the statement. Sometimes it is telling a mother, gently but clearly, that love without questions can become a weapon in the wrong hands. I did not enjoy what happened that night. I did not feel powerful watching Patricia cry or Marilyn shake or Ethan finally understand the price of his vanity. Justice is rarely clean when families are involved. But it was necessary. Because there were people at that table who had been quietly harmed, quietly pressured, quietly embarrassed, and quietly drained. And quiet had not saved them. So we stopped being quiet. That is the lesson I carried out of that restaurant. Not revenge. Not victory. Just this. You do not need to be cruel to protect your ground. But when someone builds their comfort on the suffering of decent people, silence is no longer kindness. It is permission. And that night, at an engagement dinner, meant to celebrate a beautiful future. We finally took that permission away.